We should be good. It's starting, but I've started the stream, so it should be good in just a second.
I just want to welcome all of you today. It's so nice to see such a nice crowd today on such a beautiful day that you spend some time with us. Let me know if you start not being able to hear me. I'm going to try. We don't have a microphone, so I'm going to try to broadcast as much as we can. I hope that all of you received a calendar, which we'll be referring to, but you also should have this handout that has more specifically what we'll be looking at as we talk. So if you don't have one of those, then wave your hand and somebody will come and help you. Again, I welcome you. My name is Jackie Cohen. This is my husband, Michael. We've been in Augusta since 1978 and been involved in the Jewish community in a variety of ways, as well as at the university. I was on faculty at the university, at Augusta College. It was at Augusta State. You don't need to know all that. And Michael's a retired physician. And you're also active within the Jewish community. And as far as the Jewish Museum is concerned, we were part of the group that went down to the city council to save these buildings. And so we're very grateful that that was a success, and are particularly grateful to Historic Augusta for partnering with us to preserve the buildings as well as our use for the Jewish community for the history. I'm on the board. I am the chair of the display committee. We've engaged a design firm that's working. You see kind of a draft, one of the drafts on the wall in this room, and we're still working to make some changes and to perfect it. And we're looking forward to an opening in a few months, after the first of the year. I'm not sure exactly when that will happen, but it'll be within the first few months of next year. And so, Michael, anything else you want to add?
You've been very comprehensive.
Okay. All right. So, we're going to be talking about the Jewish holy days of autumn. As you can see, there's a string of 4 of them. You can see on your calendars. And I do want to welcome, as I had put in my script, to a brief. It will be brief because in an hour we can't possibly talk deeply about all of these things. So we're going to try to hit the high points and give some understanding as to how all of this flows through. But we hope that it's spectacular. So as some of you may know from certain TV shows, the brief but spectacular review of the holidays. And there will be feedback sheets for you to fill out later. So as we're talking, if there's something that you think would be something you'd like to delve in further, because again, we can't do everything in depth, you think that would be interesting to know more about, be sure when you fill out your feedback sheet, you point that out, or if there's something that we could have done differently that you would have enjoyed, then we want to know that as well. Michael.
Give heed to the blast of the shofar, the shrill quivering notes of the shofar, sounding its message of warning, its cry of alarm and awakening, urging us to work one and all to combat the ills that beset us. Accept ye the challenge to triumph over forces of wrath and destruction. Remove from your midst crime and warfare, all poverty, greed, and contention. Heed ye the sound of the shofar, the blast that is blown, O my people.
Very fancy shofar here. Joshua and his son Al calling, so we learn some more about the shofar here. No. Okay, so is the Jewish calendar embedded within the calendar for the Gregorian calendar, yes? Okay, so you'll notice that at the top, the first month is Nisan, and that's not the month that we are in right now. The month we are in right now is Tishrei, so you can see the shofar down there on that. But there's a lot of, notice how there's not a direct correlation between the months because they shift around. Michael, you want to help us with that?
So the Jewish calendar is a lunar calendar, and so there's 354 days and 12 months of the lunar calendar, so it falls 11 or 12 days short. So it has to be adjusted because most of the Jewish holidays are seasonal, harvest festivals and planting festivals, and so it would become obvious after several cycles that you're in the wrong season. And so there's in a 19-year cycle, there's 7 leap months that are added. So they're added right, so this calendar goes up, this is 1, 2, the third month, so that there's an extra month here. It's actually added between this Shabbat and the Adar. There's Adar 1 and then Adar 2 is where the holiday of Purim is, which precedes sort of the time between Purim and Passover stays the same even during the leap year. But that explains why some years the Rosh HaShana is in early September or late, and other times it's in late September. So because that cycle has to be correct, and the first month is up here, as we said before, is stated in the Bible that the Passover is in the first month, and the months of the year are named very. There's a major correlation between the Babylonian calendars. During the Babylonian exile, a lot of names of holiday or names of months were incorporated.
So when you're, the handout that you have is different from this handout that's on the screen. This was last year. Last year, because of the shifting around of holidays, it's a little bit different this year. Last year, all of the fall holidays were in September, and that overlap between the holidays. But this year, because we did have a leap year, so we had that extra month of Adar that shifted everything over so that everything would kind of adjust instead of keep getting later and later. So that now these the holidays that we're talking about now, those fall holidays, are still in the Jewish month of Tishrei. So you can see the reference to the Jewish month at the bottom of each of the boxes. And so it goes from the first of Tishrei is Rosh HaShana, and then it goes all the way down till we get to Simchat Torah, which we'll talk about also. And then the next month will be Cheshvan. The month before Rosh Hashanah, before Tishrei, is Elul. And that's important because it's part of the preparation for the holy days and all the asking for forgiveness and reviewing your life. And then having Rosh Hashanah to begin those 10 days when you ask first for forgiveness of your friends and then of God for what you might have done. So we have Rosh Hashanah there. And I'm probably getting ahead. During the month of Elul, we have, let's see, I think this next slide will be easy to see. So you can see a little bit more about that, a little bit bigger. And the month before is, again, Elul, when we get ready, spiritually ready. And in fact, there's a special Saturday night service called Slichot, when we stay up. We usually have the service as close to midnight as possible. Sometimes we kind of move it up a little bit earlier to make people more comfortable. But the idea is to really get into here, really get into the idea that this is an important reflection time.
So in the Torah, Bible, Leviticus, the first day of the 7th month is established, and you shall observe complete rest, like on the Sabbath. And it's a sacred occasion commemorated with loud blast. And this is truah, which was the word that was used to describe one of the notes of the shofar. And so you shall not work in your occupations, and you shall bring an offering by fire to the Lord. So this was a time to come to the temple to bring an offering. So initially this was called the day of the big sound, and later the rabbis began calling it Rosh HaShana, or the head of the year. And this is the time when the number of the year flips over. So like on December 31st, when the ball drops and we go to the next year, so when it becomes Tishrei, that's when the number changes. So here we have Rosh Hashanah, which is observed for 2 days in Israel and in the rest of the world in the diaspora. And sometimes in Israel, holidays are only observed, the days of rest, the first day and the last day are observed in Israel, and then in the rest of the world it's observed for 2 days because of the problem with getting the word out to the rest of the world in the olden days when there were either signal fires on hills or messengers sent out. People weren't sure, so they said, well, we're not sure, we'll do it for 2 days, so it's one of those things we write.
It's also a matter of the day changing. You want to make sure that you're on that day. And if with this current policy of getting on all these Zoom calls, we're all used to the fact that, well, it's about 7 hours to Europe, and it's about 6 or 7 hours to Israel. So, to make sure that you're actually overlapping on that correct day when you're in the diaspora, if you're outside of Israel, when we commemorate things that we believe occurred in the land of Israel.
And also, the first of each month is a special day. It's called Rosh Chodesh, or the head of the month. And except for the head of the year, that supersedes the celebration of the month. So that's always missing in the service. Why are we celebrating the new month? Well, we're celebrating the new year.
Okay, so we're going to go back to talking about the shofar. You'll see a series in these slides of Israeli stamps that commemorate various holidays and various events. These are actually postage stamps, just like we have stamps sometimes that commemorate the moon landing or some historical event. So this one, and there's the ram's horn, which is what the shofar is, the ram's horn. And then the blessing, the names of the calling for the shofar, the one that you heard called for Joshua to be able to call. So Tekiah means one long blast. And then Shvarim are 3 short blasts. So the first is kind of a call to warning. So again, like Michael said, if I wanted to let somebody know in the next village about something, I'd get up at the top of the hill and blow that thing so that they would be able to hear what the warning that, and then carried on to the next. So we have the Tekiah is the warning, the call to attention. Shvarim, those 3 medium blasts are like crying or wailing, tears of sadness or of joy. And then Teruah are 9 short, at least 9 short blasts. That's a wake-up call, like your alarm clock. It doesn't seem to want to stop at just 3 or 4. It goes on to 5 or 6 or 7, 9 blasts. And then Tekiah Gedolah. Gedolah means big, and so Tekiah means a big blast. And so you go, as long as you heard it, Joshua, the product of Davidson, who learning to play the trombone, could do that long blast on the shofar. So those are the kinds of blasts that you hear. So now, I want to see what you recognize. So just about anybody can blow the shofar. So on the day of the holiday, on Rosh HaShana, unless it's on Shabbat, we'll hear 100 blasts all day long. And then on Yom Kippur, we don't hear it all day, but at the very end of the day, we just have one big because most people have been fasting or well enough to fast on Yom Kippur. Then they'll, everybody that has a shofar will try to blow this as long as possible at the end of the day.
And which of the little girls blew it the longest?
And by the way, that looks like a challenge, the long one, but I've heard tell that the longer ones are easier to blow. I'm not sure. I just heard that. We'll see.
So there are special prayers that are said on the high holy days, on Rosh HaShana, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. The ark cover is changed to white, and the Torah covers are changed to white for the Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, for these holidays. The special prayers in the prayer book, there's a special prayer book, and these prayers have been added over several thousand years, and I guarantee you that no prayer has been deleted. So it's a very long book. We don't always say every word, but it's a great history book. So one of the key prayers is and let us speak of the awesomeness on Rosh Hashanah, and we picture God with a big book writing what's going to happen to us during Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, the decree is inscribed, and on Yom Kippur is sealed. So toward the end of the last of Yom Kippur, we talk about we are sealed in the book of life. And by that time, we're running out of time. All that praying has to be for some good. So what do we do to avert the severe decree? So the answer is repentance, prayer, and righteousness, and teshuvah, tefillah, and tzedakah. And you've probably heard about tzedakah or charity, and it really means more than charity. It's more than just giving money. It's good deeds, helping people out. Because
Righteousness.
always help people out who don't need money, but they need help.
Yeah, tzedakah is right. Being a tzaddik is being a righteous person.
And one thing it stresses, it's important to ask for forgiveness from anyone you've offended before you ask for forgiveness from God. That's harder to do.
So there's a custom of something called tashlich. Tashlich means to cast away your sins. And so the idea, this is from Micah, is to go to a water, fresh water, where the water's flowing, where there's something living in that water, and hurl your sins into the sea. Ideally, you pull out all the lint from your pockets and figuratively do that. Often people throw out bread that the fish will then get. And this is a custom that involves a lot of people ceremonially. There is some question on some people's part that people may feel as though that gives them an excuse. I've thrown away my sins. I don't have to go ask for forgiveness. But that's not the case. This is just a way to figuratively represent that activity and perhaps involve especially younger people in doing something to represent asking for forgiveness. So there are many common prayers. One is one that you eat an apple, B'rei Pri Ha'etz, and so you have apples and honey. Halav U'Dvash, you hear about milk, the land of milk and honey. Honey representing a sweet year. And so here's this prayer, and then on this greeting card, on this stamp, there's a Shana Tova U'Mitiva. You should have a good and sweet year. So that's the prayer for that. And you'll notice on some of the things that we have up here, we have apples and honey representing, and before you leave, you can all get the flavored honey sticks to make sure that you get a sweet year as the year goes on. So let's see, another representative fruit, Michael.
It's the pomegranate, which is this pomegranate.
Mm-hmm.
And the pomegranate is one of the fruits that were returned by the spies who went into across the Jordan River and came back with a land of wheat and barley and vines, figs, pomegranates, a land of olive trees, oil and honey. And so what's special about a pomegranate, besides it was one of those fruits described in the Bible. And it turns out that Alexander Humboldt, who was a graduate student at Columbia, during his free time, counted the number of seeds in 206 pomegranates. And the average was 613. I won't tell you about the standard deviation and all that. But anyway, that's the number of commandments in the Torah. So it's an aha. So that's another reason for the pomegranates to be included in this. And there aren't a lot of seeds in the pomegranate.
So there's lots of representations of these symbols on greeting cards. We have some greeting cards up here that we've received over time, where we have a round challah. I brought the round challah here, and that one has raisins in it to make it special. And round for the fullness of the new year. Something special. A challah is a special egg-based bread that we have typically on Friday night, but on Rosh HaShana, and we want to have something special, so we make it round. It looks like a crown of God. There's the pomegranate here. These are excuse me, beets, and they're sort of shaped like a pomegranate, a little bit easier to find, I guess. And then apples cut, and apples are ready to put into honey. So just lots of ways to communicate those special times. So this is a time of the 10 days as we're getting ready for Yom Kippur. And we begin with the transition of the 10 days of repentance. Remember I mentioned those 30 days in Lulav, and then the 10 days between Rosh HaShana and Yom Kippur. So we're ready to start to get into Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. This holiday is actually described directly as a Day of Atonement in the Torah.
So the 10th day of the 7th month is the Day of Atonement. So this is a biblical commandment. You shall do no work, and you also shall practice self-denial, which currently means not eating. We usually eat beforehand, and then sometimes, so it's usually 24, 25, 26 hours not eating. But the caveat is if you're sick and you don't want to make yourself sick by not eating, if you have certain medical conditions, you don't want to harm yourself. And people wear white. They wear, theoretically, you shouldn't wear leather shoes because something has been killed to make the leather shoes, and somehow it seems less affliction to wear some comfortable bedroom slipper instead of your uncomfortable dress shoes. So I never understood that particular custom.
But again, notice that we have this idea of us observing.
And the service begins with the Kol Nidre prayer, and this is it's all vows, and it's said in the plural, so it starts off with the congregation saying it's okay for everyone to pray together. Even though you have sinned, it's okay for you and I and everyone to pray together. And we're gathering as a congregation. The prayer is said 3 times. Usually they add to the solemnity of the occasion. The ark or the Torah scrolls are kept. It's open. All the Torah scrolls in the congregation are taken out and usually held around the reading stand by either the past presidents, the members of the board, the most righteous people. And then the Kol Nidre is read with a special chant, and it's usually, and this is a dated picture of the pandemic.
Right, and notice that they're both men and women participating, and the fact that during this time that we're holding the Torah, it's even during the pandemic.
And we're asking forgiveness, and the prayer was originally in the past tense, referring to asking forgiveness for sins you've done, and then at some point, probably under pressure from things like the Inquisition and forced conversion, it was changed to the future tense. So it's like any vow made to God if I say, okay, don't kill me, I'll do this, and God forbid. And so you sort of have an insurance policy against being forced to do something like that. But it's not, and the Jewish people got in a lot of trouble because people would criticize, well, we can't trust the Jews because they had this prayer that says anything they say doesn't count. But those are only things you say, obligations you make to God and not to your fellow man. There are many of those 613 commandments that say how you're supposed to run your business fairly. So that doesn't include.
So this is the short confessional. There's several different times during the service if there's some kind of confessional. This is in alphabetical order in Hebrew: Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, and so forth. So it's just a series of words. And it's interesting, if you go to several prayer books, and even in the same prayer book, there can be a variety of translations, sort of interpretations as to what would be meaningful. There's even, every once in a while, there are people who say, well, if you were to write the confessional now, what would you add to that? What would you think is now that wasn't before? And any of that's fair game. The idea is that we, and notice the we, this is all in the Hebrew as well, they're plural verbs. We are together as a community, saying that we have done these things. So even if I haven't done that, I still ask forgiveness for what we may have done. So it's a community idea. Then 4 times during the year, there's a special service to honor people who have passed away. Annually, on the anniversary of a relative's death, there are certain prayers that are said called the Yortzeit. But this Yizkor service is one that everybody gets together and even honors people that were in the congregation or people that were friends. It doesn't necessarily have to be a relative. And so it's 4 times a year. So we have Yom Kippur, which will be actually, we had Yizkor already during Yom Kippur. And then at Sukkot, actually this will be on Monday, at the end of Sukkot on the 8th day. We'll have a special service at the synagogue. And Pesach and Shavuot. Pesach, you know about. Shavuot may not be as familiar. It's the giving of the Torah. And these are called the Shalosh Regalim, 3 legs, which really means the 3 pilgrimage holidays. So at the time that the people were living in Israel, they would go to the temple at those 4 times. And so the Yom Kippur and then the 3 holidays, and that's why they would have these kinds of special services. And then in congregations, there are a variety of ways that people are honored. This is a dedication wall at Rosh HaShana. There are dedication walls of different types and different congregations where people recognize their relatives that they've passed. It's an interesting history lesson as you go to a congregation to see whose relatives there were and what their names were, begin to recognize them.
So the last service on the Day of Atonement is called the Elah. The gates are closing. So this is the same image of God's finishing the book. He's going to seal us, close the gate. The gates are closing. There's a sense of urgency, and also we've been fasting. It's time for things to be over with, and we're standing. We stand for the entire part of this service, and instead of asking that to be inscribed in the book of life, which is Hadbenu, we ask to be Hadbenu, to be sealed in the book of life. And so you can picture the gates are closing, we're praying harder, or we're just barely standing up and wish you're thinking. You're not supposed to be thinking that you're hungry, but if you're human and you haven't eaten all day, it's remember you're getting afflicting yourselves. So the service ends with the sounding of the shofar, and there's usually a festive break fast. Breakfast is break the fast after you've been sleeping all night, so it's a really festive occurrence, and people getting ready for the next holiday after this is over.
Right, immediately, right?
Immediately.
People immediately begin building their sukkah. So those of you that went and were able to see the sukkah, you know a lot already about how that is done. When we build our sukkah, you'll see how that's done. So this is immediately after Yom Kippur. Some people even that night or the next day begin to put up their sukkah. If they have one at home, there's usually one in the congregation, in order to be able to get ready for the holiday of Sukkot. So this is a holiday that is described in the Torah, in the 5 books of Moses, in Leviticus, on the 15th day of the 7th month. It's interesting, there are several holidays that are on the 15th day. This is a lunar calendar. The first day of the month is the beginning, is just beginning to see the moon, right? So how big is the moon on the 15th day?
Yeah.
Remember, there's 30 days in the month, so we're, it gets bigger, 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 and then it gets smaller, 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 right? So on the 15th of the month is a full moon. So this is one of those full moon festivals. Where do we go? What do we do with the sukkah? What did you learn we're supposed to do with the sukkah?
Rest.
We're supposed to go out there and be in it. And so if you're gonna go out at night and eat your dinner in the sukkah, wouldn't it be nice if there was a full moon that went your way? Because you're supposed to be able to see the stars and the moon. So it's one of those 15th of the month holidays. Pesach is like that too. It's on the 15th of the month. So this tells you the whole story in the Torah, and we're going to break it down. This is about the festival itself. The festival is on the 15th of the 7th month. We have 7 days of complete rest, and on the first day, complete rest, and on the 8th day, you have complete rest. And this is a festival to God. So you have everything that you're doing has to do with celebration and a festival to God. So you have here all the elements that are in the sukkah. You know, the one you saw out there. You have a temporary roof. They used a mat. This is using branches. Often people, it's called shkach. They try that, shkach. Okay, to put up, and then they're sitting around the table. And so this is just an artist's interpretation of what one sukkah looks like. I once saw in a book, and I wish I could find it again, pictures of Sukkot from all over the world. And people that had them on balconies in New York, where they have apartments and have a balcony, and ones that are outside, people who live more in a rural area. We have one in our backyard. Other people put them up in the front yard. So they might look slightly different, but they have those certain elements.
So we're instructed to live in these booths, these temporary booths, which should remind us of the exodus from Egypt. And so, in some climates, it's not easy to live. You know, if you're up in the upper peninsula of Michigan or something in October, it may be a little chilly. So, or even down here sometimes. So we usually don't live in the sukkah, but we usually take our meals in the sukkah in the morning or afternoon, whatever. And adds to the fun of the holiday. And decorating the sukkah with lights and decorations, cards, hanging sort of like, it's a harvest festival. And so we'll go to the
And importantly, is future generations. You'll see this several places in the Torah, that one of the things that are the most important is how you might teach the next generation. So it's one thing for us to talk to each other, but to be sure that the children understand and are able to carry on is one of the most important parts of the holidays. So there are always some elements that are just plain fun, just plain good to do.
So the sukkah can come in various forms. This is our oldest son in the backyard in California, and this is from a kid. And you see the sukkah project, sukkah in a box. I don't think the wood came in, but maybe all the connectors did. And then we see several interpretations of the different holiday stamps in Israel. And It's always a great place to use your old standing lamps and provide for illumination. And this is ours in the backyard. We're currently it's made with a PVC pipe and unbleached muslin for the temporary walls, and some bamboo mats for the top, and all sorts of lights. We have some palm trees for ambiance. And this is a tree from the Etrog plant. And this doesn't have 613 seeds, but it has a lot. And unfortunately, our plants have grown, have germinated and grown, but we haven't produced any fruit. So whatever magical thing in the land of the Mediterranean climate, we do not have a Mediterranean climate. These plants winter in the garage, and we're hoping that.
They look very much like a lemon, and then we had a lemon tree in our backyard, our front yard actually, when I was living in Florida, when I grew up in Orlando. But we just can't seem to get our extra trees to produce fruit. Actually, what was explained was that their Etrog came from Italy, not from Israel. So I'm not sure whether it takes more of a Mediterranean climate, but I can't imagine anything more
They
than
were in Israel and Morocco.
Yeah. And then this Bruchim Habayim, which is the sign that we brought in, just as a welcome to welcome people, because we want to welcome guests into our sukkah. So there's a long-standing tradition of something called Uspazen, which is a Yiddish word for welcoming guests. This is an artist inkwash about bringing living guests, bringing guests to share in the joy. It's a holiday of rejoicing, actually, another name for the holiday of Sukkot. And often the forefathers, that's Abraham, Isaac, let's see, we go in the right direction here. So Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, Aaron, and David. So that there's 7, so each night you say something special about those. It's a tradition to do that, to welcome that person spiritually. And then, of course, some of us said, wait a minute, let's invite the matriarchs too. Okay, so we have Sarah, and Rebecca, and Rachel, and Leah, and Miriam, and Deborah, and Ruth. And then some people make other lists of people that they feel were important to them or to their families or to Jewish tradition, and say, oh, I'm going to recognize those as well. But the idea of opening and sharing, so we were very excited about having this kind of program to be able to share with others on this particular holiday. So the Lulav and the Etrog. So this is the Lulav. This is, by the way, this is a dress I wear every year. I have my palm trees. I have one here. This is my special one. It's like the palm leaf. So we have the palm, and we have the willow, and we have the myrtle. That's right. And then the 4 species that are described that we should have. And you heard one interpretation of those. Script. Of what those are. So they're actually listed in Leviticus. So this is something that is prescribed that they would be representative. There's different interpretations of how you might think about those. The interpretation you heard when you toured the sukkah outside had to do with characteristics of people. Another one is body parts. The palm is like your spine. The myrtle is that your feet are like the shape of your eyes. The willow is a longer, thinner piece. And the etrog is like your heart. So you should stand for things that are important. You should always look and notice things that are important. You should speak correctly. And your heart. So you have all of these things that all should be focused on what should happen. So that's another interpretation of the Lulav and the Etrog. And we have special prayers that we say in the shape of the Lulav and the Etrog in the Sukkah, but not on Shabbat. So now we're getting down to Michael.
The holiday that's actually is the eighth day of assembly is a separate holiday from Sukkot at the end of, it means the eighth day of assembly. And there's special prayers, and I'm not going to get into that. But after that is Simchat Torah, which means the rejoicing of the Torah. So this is a holiday that was established. It's not a biblical holiday. It was established by the rabbis probably in the 9th or 10th century of the Common Era in the Babylonian academies. And the Torah is a scroll that's read from Genesis to Deuteronomy. And so at the end, or at the very end, the last part of Deuteronomy, and that's read, and then you start over again with the Genesis, with the first part. In the beginning, God created the heaven and earth. So that's all done on the same night, and in some congregations the next morning. And there's usually all the Torah scrolls in the synagogue are carried around seven processions, and they're singing and dancing, and sometimes the Torah scroll is unwrapped or unwound, and it's notice everyone's holding the white gloves on, like at the Augusta Jewish Museum or Museum of History, and then all the children are invited up to the Torah to say a blessing. The Torah is held over their heads by a talus, and they say a blessing over the Torah. And so most congregations have more than one Torah scroll because it would take a long time to wrap it back to the beginning again. So usually you have one set up in the beginning and one set up it's gone to the end. And here
So
we
there's
have
lots of celebrations. Notice the emphasis on the children again. Bringing them up to the Torah, having them have a blessing said, with them standing under that. It's almost like a wedding. You know, there's a chuppah and a wedding, and so this holding this talus over the children, the prayer shawl over the children, it kind of reminds you of that kind of feeling of reinforcing the connection between the people. So notice again the carefully held scroll there.
and the children would march around, and you have flags. And this looks like someone stuck an apple on top of their flag.
That's what we used to do.
And the kids would make a lot of noise. But as a kid, I thought that decorum was a Hebrew word. Because the rabbi said, there's no decorum in here. So it was only later that I learned, oh, it's an Hebrew.
Actually, we were told to put our apples on the top of our flags because otherwise there was a lot of flag fighting. So you put your apple on top of the flag, then that stopped that. But you know, lots of ways to involve everybody. So we've gone through all of this, we've gone through all these seasons, and so what are our thoughts? What are our thoughts having gone this journey from great inspiration to lots of celebration? And so here are our thoughts, Michael.
Well, on one card, on Rosh HaShana it is written, on Yom Kippur it is sealed. To those I have wronged, I ask forgiveness. To those I have helped, I wish I did more. To those I neglected, I ask for understanding. To those who have helped me, I sincerely thank you.
So I want to thank everybody for helping us to put this together. We have a variety of websites that we've used. All the Hebrew was taken from a site called safaria.org, which has both the Hebrew and the translation and lots of interpretation available. And then My Jewish Learning is another site that was very convenient. And lots of prayer books and other texts that we've used. The shofar blowing, again, we have to thank Joshua for that and they all for calling. And then the recorded one that was with the kids is from something called PJ Library, which provides a lot of resources, particularly for kids. And most of the photos were either from our home or our family or from synagogue. And although she did not help us this year, we put this together again for an event last year. And Francine Clinton worked with us, and certainly the technical advice by John Cal, who's always a great help, especially for me. I get this far on my technology ability, and then I'm done. So I do want to thank you for your attendance and for your attention. I hope you'll submit the forms. There are some feedback forms that look like this that are available. I have here that we can pick up, or there's.
We'll have them at the outside.
You have them outside. Do you have also besides these, or do you need these?
We need those and then
Okay, all right. And when you pick those up, and for the kids, we have coloring sheets and chauffeur, if anybody young or old would like a plastic chauffeur. It won't
They're
quite
out
make the
here.
sound that those do, but they're kind of fun to try to do those different calls. I do want to urge you to keep up with the Augusta Jewish Museum. We thank you for being here today. Lots is happening, and so we want to sign up for the newsletter, to call if you want to find out about that, or check the website, email, and you'll take a honey stick, they'll be out there in the front, or you can come get one from here, so that you'll have a sweet new year. And you're welcome to keep the calendar. The reason we gave you the calendar is so you can see how the whole year works. If you'd like to take it, if you don't want to take it, you can leave it here for others. As far as things happening here at the museum, on Wednesday the 19th, the museum is providing space for a lunch with the J. That is the Jewish Community Center and Federation of Augusta Senior Lunch from 11:30 to 1, and it's going to be hosted by the JCCFA. And guest speakers will be here from the Community Council on Aging. If you want more information about how to attend that, I have a phone number that I can give you. On the evening of November 5th, Susan is going to tell us more about our upcoming fundraiser. And on Tuesday, the 29th, all day, AJM is participating in Giving Tuesday. I'm sure some of the organizations you're involved in are doing that kind of thing. And then the next gathering that we will have is in December 11th at 2 p.m. AJM Hanukkah Open House featuring Hanukkah music, crafts, and holiday treats. So with that, I will turn it over to Susan to talk about our fundraiser coming up, which is really very exciting.
Also, speaking of feedback, there will be, there's some food set up in the back room, correct?
Oh, that's right, snacks, there are some
We're
snacks.
talking about feedback.
We can talk, and we can talk.
And we want to thank Judy Geary for doing the food setup this afternoon.
Just one quick announcement about Giving Tuesday. It is recommended that you go to our PayPal page, so you don't have to pay a fee if you want to donate to the museum.
It's a link on our website
Yeah.
that goes to PayPal.
And the website's not up there, but on the evening of November 5th, Michael J. Lasser, he's like 8 years old, he's been in, had his own radio show, Fascinating Rhythm, he's written books. He actually will be at the Morris on Thursday evening, but he's doing a completely different show for us. It's, we're calling it Abyssal, which means a little. Abyssal of this, abyssal of that, a whole lot of music. And it's Jewish influences on Broadway. And he had 2 singers come with him, Jessica Allen Best and Jessica Allen is Alan Jones, Jessica Best, and they call her Jess. And if you go to the website, I'm sending John a clip of the 2 of them doing a song from Fiddler, that you'll be able to hear Jess's voice and Alan's voice. They're phenomenal. I am chair of fundraising, and our fundraising committee has been very busy. We have secured sponsors that we hope will pay all the expenses. So the fundraising part of it is tickets, and we have a very limited number of tickets to sell. And you can actually get tickets on the website, which was the
I can call the website.
Okay. And I wish I had sent you the website because,
It's AugustaJewishMuseum.org, and there's a link.
Right there.
right.
There it is.
I did not send her, I could have sent her the link that we could have,
I can show it if it will show. I can
it would be the
website.
event.
Susan, we will send a follow-up email to everybody that attended today, and it'll have the link
Okay.
to all of these websites that Jackie has spoken about.
But we may be able to pull it up so you can see it. Because it does show the,
And
No, it's not showing up.
on your way out, we will
This is what it
have,
looks like.
we will have handouts with the website as well as the shofar that Jackie spoke about and the coloring sheet. And we're so excited to have our magnet that you can put on your refrigerator, remind you about the Augusta Jewish Museum. And that the next community program will be December 11th. Jackie, will you? Did
I
you
already
have-
mentioned it.
Okay, so thank you so much for coming and come have some refreshments in the center room.
Thank you.